All right, welcome everybody. So we're going to do a little bit of grounding meditation, and you're welcome to do this in a seat if you like, or you could do it lying down on your mat or any restorative pose that you like. We're just going to kind of check in, and then we'll do the tarot afterwards. So if you want to stay closer to the screen, you're welcome to do that too. So just go ahead and find whatever shape works for you to be in a place where you feel like you can breathe really easily. And if you are a little on the tired side, like I am today, laying down is a great way to start. You can always come up to your seat again later. So do your fidgeting, whatever it is that you need to do. Add your props if there's anything that would make you feel a bit more comfortable. Close your eyes if that works for you. And take some deep breaths. Just taking a moment to let yourself be exactly as you are. Feeling however it is you feel, with the energy that you have, the mood that you're in, just letting everything be as it is. Just noticing it. And beginning to notice the earth beneath your body, your relationship with gravity. Notice if you're kind of resisting it in any way, and see if you can soften a little bit more. And if you are seated, just staying upright, but with as little effort as possible. So you are releasing, the shoulders, muscles of the face. And then acknowledging yourself on the land that you are on, which for me is Plains, Cree, and Blackfoot land in Treaty 6 territory. And taking a moment to be with your relationship with that land. Even here, you may be noticing the quality of the light behind your eyes, the temperature in the air, maybe even a little bit of allergies, which is a part of being in relationship with the land and the flora of the area that you're in. And part of what we're doing here is noticing ourselves in relation to the natural world, the seasons, our communities, our families in some cases, and the moon. The moon is something that we share even when we're on different lands. And right now we're on about a 5th night, so just a few nights away from the new moon in a waxing moon. And so that moon energy is slowly beginning to build, but we're still in the sort of darker half of the waxing part of the cycle. So this can be a really nice time for starting to put some action behind our intentions. But just check in how you're feeling with it. I'm definitely still in a little bit of the new moon vibes, a little bit of the quieter, more introverted place. And the waxing moon kind of draws us out of that towards the more extroverted energy of the full moon. So just noticing where you're at with that right now. And one of the things we notice when we do that is that it's always changing. Okay, so I'm going to share our tarot card for today's moon. So if you are laying down, feel free to just slowly make your way to a comfortable seat where you can see the screen if you want to, and we'll read this card together. So it's a collective card, a collective reading. We work together to understand what the themes of the card are that are relevant for us today. So here is the card that I chose for today, which is called the High Priestess. It's the second card of the major arcana. You don't need to know what that means. But what I would love for you to do is just take a good look at the card for yourself and tell me what you notice about it and what you feel when you look at the card. We can bring it in a little closer so you can see some of the details as well. Stay relatively in focus here, hopefully.
For me, yeah, it feels really powerful, but also there's a blurring and merging of boundaries between the natural and the human, and the technological and the natural. So there's a kind of a sense of power, like in isolation, but also power, like coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel that with this one too.
What is above her head? Is
She's
that
kind of,
the moon?
Yeah, it could be actually. That's quite subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like, and there's also a little moon right there. That's a little moon. It's a bit hard to see, but and there's Earth over there.
Okay.
And then she's got another mysterious planet in there inside of herself. But yeah, I think that's a little moon shadow up there.
I think it's really interesting because the clothing and hairstyle are of this time when femininity was about being constrained and held back. And yet there are these things that are almost sprouting from her in spite of that containment almost that is intended to hold it back. It's just kind of, right? She's got whatever that planet is inside of her. She's got something on her hands. She's got things coming out kind of all over the place. And then she herself is perched in this nest. And it's this really interesting juxtaposition of these two forces that are there, one holding her back and the other, this just almost uncontrollable explosion of things.
Yeah, so part of what I hear in that is the mastery of freedom and containment, like the ways that you need to be contained or the ways that you are contained, but also knowing the powers that you have even within that. What else?
The nest and the perch is kind of interesting because you usually think of a nest as a safe place where you're going to care and nurture eggs if you're a bird and you're young. But I also think about eagles, and people who have found eagles' nests find an unusual collection of things out of nests. And as Liz was just saying, there's a lot of unusual things coming out of this woman figure. So I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but I like the unusualness about the card.
Yeah, and there's this sort of idea of collecting different pieces into a safe place. And I think the egg too, that's something that I thought of, which it makes me think of, something new, new potential, in innovation, I think is something that comes up for me looking at this image. Oh, Elaine, you're muted.
I'm curious about her hand holding her other arm, but it's not really, is that her hand there? It almost looks to me like is it made of glass or something, or
I
what?
read it as a scroll.
A scroll, okay.
Yeah, like you know, I think of like, you know, maybe something that she
Like
has
knowledge or something.
some knowledge. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something that she knows. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I can't see the other hand, so it's sort of tucked away, and then she's
Yeah,
holding.
there's sort of
Yeah,
she
like,
sort of has
okay,
the scroll here and her other hand is there.
right,
So one hand is a little hidden underneath
right,
the scroll. Yeah.
right. So definitely something of some sort of knowledge that seems prominent to me, along with all of the other stuff that's going on for her. So maybe that is like a mastery or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love reading these cards with you guys because I feel like you have such good just insights into what's happening in the image. And of course, the you know the meaning of the card is fluid. It depends on who's reading it and the day and things like that. So I'll share a little bit about what I know and feel about the High Priestess, and we'll just kind of add to that. So a lot of what you guys said really resonates for me, especially around that idea of a coming together of opposites. That's really what I see here too, is you know, part of what I think of is like, this is a person who really has mastery over the place where her intuition meets her action, or where her conscious meets her unconscious. Or, you know, I sort of think of someone who, and maybe this is sort of how I think of myself in a certain way, it's like being in a place where I like to work with intuitive tools like tarot, and I like to work with energy work and things like that. But I always want to marry it with like evidence-based practice and like what I've learned about how the human body and the nervous system works. And for me, like a lot of what I like to do meets in that place where there's both. Like it's very material and real and sort of measurable, but there's also this element of it that's a little more intuitive and a little bit less explainable. And you know, the High Priestess is really, if you think of even just what High Priestess means, it's someone who is really a master in a spiritual realm, right? It's someone who really knows, you know, I think one way you could read that is like a witch as well, like someone who really knows how to do her own magic. And I was reading a little bit more about this card just before class as well, and I really liked Jessica Doerr's interpretation, which is that she mentions that the Magician, which is the first card, and the High Priestess is the second. So the Magician is someone who has like all the tools available to him, and it's a very like, I'm aware of myself, I know what I'm doing, I have control over all of these things. So that represents the conscious aspect of so they would be like two sides of the same coin, and the High Priestess is the other side, which is the unconscious aspect. And the question that she asks around the High Priestess, which I'll ask you, and you know, you don't have to answer it, but the question is, what is not being said? What is being hidden? And Elaine, I think what you pointed out about the one hand being hidden, you know, there is this kind of mystery here. There's something that's like, okay, what am I not acknowledging to myself? Right? Like, what have I been avoiding that's like sitting in my unconscious that I actually need to look at, or that might give me some power if I were to really acknowledge that piece that's hidden. So this is someone who knows how to bring the hidden to the light, essentially, I think is for me what I think about when I look at this card. So part of how I'm thinking about that around this particular moon phase is that I think that's kind of the moment we're in too. We're moving from the dark aspect of the moon into the lighter aspect, and we're just on that cusp of it where we're not quite at that half point where the energies are equal. We're still a little bit in the darker side. And so I feel like part of what this card would be offering to us is that, you know, this is a moment where we can stay a little bit in that place where it's like intuitive and it's unconscious, but with the intention of bringing that into our actions, bringing that into our behaviors and our conscious minds and our awareness. So we're not quite ready to go to that place yet. We need to do a little bit more work in this unconscious, dark new moon kind of zone. And then we can pull it with us as we're working on our intentions with the waxing moon towards the full. How's that feel? Any other thoughts about that?
I think that really speaks to me about how I'm feeling about the place that I am in as we move out of this pandemic, which, like, we know COVID is still around. We know, we had this time when it was very much more, there were more absolutes, right? Like, okay, you must not do this and you must not do that. And so we kind of all were in this place of, okay, this is where we are. And it was a little, while it was difficult, it was more prescribed. And so now that I feel a little in that place still of trying to figure it out. Where am I in moving forward? And, just really still being like, what's my knowledge? What's my comfort levels with things? What feels right for me? Versus, anyway, it just sort of speaks to me on the larger place of where I'm at, not just with this particular moon cycle. And that thing of having that knowledge, but some things hidden, that sort of went, oh, okay, that's kind of an interesting place that I think many people may be at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this speaks to intuition for sure. And it speaks also to, like, I think we forget all the time that we know so much, and we forget, like, we get scared or things change or whatever it is, and we feel like we are novices in ourselves, or we don't know what we want or whatever it is. But often when we slow down and we really feel inside, we're like, no, I know actually how I feel or what I want or what I need. We just need to kind of slow down and remember, like, come back to this place.
That really resonates with me as well, because I've been really trying to live with kind of the paradox of decision making. And what I mean by that is, like, all the scientific research says, sort of in line with what you just said, Julie, that we actually make our decisions before we articulate them most of the time. There's some, like, crazy statistic that when they actually look at how we make decisions, that we think that logic is involved because we apply it after, but actually it's our instinct that makes the decision, and then we post rationalize. And when I think about that, I'm like, well, for better or for worse, if I'm making almost all of my decisions and then post rationalizing them with all kinds of logic and justification and all this other nonsense, which I'm purporting is, like, very important and blah, 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 and these are the reasons, then if that's the case, then lately I've been working with the space of surrender to that, in a way. Like, okay, well, that doesn't mean it's not either or exactly. It doesn't mean that the logic didn't apply itself to the instinct in the first place. It doesn't mean, by the same token, that the logic isn't also connected to instinct afterwards, but that there's this fusion and this intermingling that is almost impossible to either articulate or even to separate in any way, that they are together and they are perhaps one. And that once I, and I'm not there yet, but once I get to a space of actual acceptance of that there might be, like, a profound calm that comes from it. And that's where I'm working towards. And when the themes we're talking about today, right? Like those contradictions in that space of both, logic, science, knowledge, and instinct, and the unconscious mind. And I don't know that they're as separated as we might pretend that they are, as, I guess, the space. And I've just been thinking about that a lot. So it really resonates with me today.
Yeah, thank you for all that. I love that. And I think part of what I'm hearing in that too is just the theme of self-trust, which is just, it's tough. Like, self-trust is sticky. Sometimes we talk about it as like, oh, just trust yourself and everything's gonna be fine. But, it's complicated. It's like, trust myself to what? What does that mean exactly? And I like that idea of surrender, of, like, trusting that if I've made a decision, it's because it's somehow in alignment with my instinct. And, wherever my instincts come from or whatever, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're coming from a useful place or a less useful place, but that's where I'm at right now. So maybe I can just sort of trust that that's where I'm going right now, and I'll keep I can trust myself to stay aware and, like, deal with the consequences as best as I can, or whatever it is. Like, I think trusting ourselves to always make the quote unquote correct decision is unfair, because there's no such thing as a correct decision, right? And we don't know. There's so much we don't know. And there's a lot of power in being in I don't know. There's a lot of room in I don't know, which is kind of nice too.
She has a planet in her gut or in her womb. So the planet, I keep on focusing on that. It seems like that planet represents, like, all this generative power that she has. And then also that possibility, like this world of possibility. Yeah, right there.
Totally. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. It's the world's inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That don't belong to anyone else. I think that's part of how I feel about it too. It's like that's really yours, that planet inside, the galaxies inside. Yeah. All right, so we can come back to the themes of the day and the card and everything at the end, but let's move a little bit. Okay. So I'm gonna invite you to come and lay on your back. And if you're not comfortable on your back, you could do child's pose instead. Maybe I'll go there. So you are welcome to start just sort of flopped out on your back. And you may want to take a moment just to take up a little bit of space. And an image that I have in my mind right now is kind of stargazing. You could imagine yourself gazing up at this endless galaxy filled with stars, which is the worlds upon worlds inside of yourself, inside of your unconscious, and being in this place where the conscious and the unconscious meet, where what you know to be true inside of yourself and all of the realities that we have to deal with day to day meet. And just allowing yourself to be in there, perhaps in that space of not knowing, being in the power of not knowing. And you're welcome to stay right where you are, or we'll come into a little side stretch, banana asana. So keep your bum where it is and just walk your feet over to the right, straight legs. You may or may not hook your left heel over your right ankle. Arms can come up and you can walk them over to the right as well. So again, the bum stays in the same place. Your left bum is heavy, but you're coming into sort of a side bend. And you can see what works for you for your arms. You can have them straighter or more open. With the elbows a little bit bent, just see what works for you. Holding opposite elbows sometimes is nice. And just breathe along that left side, just creating some space for yourself here. And if you are in child's pose, rather than laying on your back, you could walk your hands over to the right. So you're still taking a little bit of a side stretch, just in a different shape. When you're ready, let's go to the other side. So you can gently unhook your left foot. Walk your feet over to the left with your legs still straight. Bum stays exactly where it is. You might hook your heel over your ankle. Arms and upper body can walk to the left as well. And this is quite soft. This is traditionally a yin pose. It's not a really active stretch, it's passive. So we're just kind of softening into this, allowing for that space to come in along the right side. And if you're in that child's pose, again, just walking your hands over to the other side. Nice spacious breaths. And when you feel ready, just gently coming back through center. And you can flop out again, or if you'd like, you can bring your knees into your chest and rock from side to side. If you've been in child's pose, just coming back through center for a couple breaths. And then we'll meet on hands and knees to come into our cat and cow, which could be done in the seat as well if you don't want to be on your hands and your knees. If you're on your back, you can roll to one side first and press yourself up. Fingers spread under the shoulders or fists, it's fine. Toes tucked or not. And I'd love for you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And just kind of intuit your cat and cow. So inhaling into a little back bend, exhaling to curl under, just really taking your time. And again, one of the themes that's coming up for us today is self-trust. So what does that mean? One of the things that it can mean for today is allowing ourselves to be in our bodies. And it's not that we're exiling our minds. Our minds are useful. We want them in relationship with our bodies. But we're allowing our focus to be on the breath and what it feels like in the body, and kind of trusting to move into the places that feel right for you and to move away from the places that don't. So add on if you want, make circles, side to side motion, shift forward and back. It really doesn't matter, okay, what this looks like. Just let it feel good for you. And you're welcome to keep working here or walk your hands a little bit farther forward. You could tuck your toes, bring your hips to your heels, curl forward into a little plank and then a little back bend, and then press your hips back to your heels. So this is sometimes called the water wheel. Just go at your pace. Nice, long, smooth breaths. And you can keep working there, or next time you come forward, come down to your belly and take 3 little cobras, just your favorite version. Pointing the toes, rolling the shoulders back, lift the chest softly. And there's not too much weight in the hands here. You can put a little bit if you want, but we're not trying to straighten the arms. We're just giving a little squeeze to the lower back. And then we'll come into downward facing dog from there. So you can tuck the toes under, press the hips back and up. Feel free to keep moving, bending one knee at a time, swaying the hips. If you're feeling stillness, that's perfect. Trust that instinct. And then walk your feet to your hands, coming into a standing forward bend, and allow your head and neck to relax. So you can have your elbows resting on your bent knees, or you can hang down, whatever arm shape works for you is fine. But just kind of allowing the conscious mind to drop below the heart. And again, you can bend one knee at a time, you can sway, or you can work in stillness. Those are all great options. Okay, and then let's roll up. So lean back into your heels, gather in your belly, and slowly curl to standing. If that doesn't work for you, of course, bend your knees generously. Keep your spine nice and neutral as you rise. Collect the shoulders onto the back when you get to the top. Then inhale, reach your arms up to the sky. And as you exhale, bring the hands together down your face towards your heart, and then point them down, bend the knees, and we'll curl down. And again, if this doesn't feel safe for you, keep your back straight, that's fine. And then like you're diving up and out of the water, a little halfway lift. Exhale, fold, let the head release, and again, roll up as long as that's safe for you. So in one breath, so a little bit faster than we did before. Arms will rise, you can open the chest. Hands come down along the midline, nose turns down, hands to the heart, curling down, little bend in the knees. Diving up like you're getting a little breath out of the water, and then back in. Rolling up. One more time like that. Hands along the midline, turning down. A little halfway lift when you get to the bottom. And this time as you exhale, step your right foot back behind you. Okay, put your knee down if that works for you. You can pad it if you need a little bit of extra support here. And I've got my blocks under my hands as well. You don't necessarily need them, but I find them quite helpful. As you inhale, you're going to press your hips forward and lift your heart. So make sure your knee is over your ankle. And as you exhale, just gently straighten that leg and bow. Okay, if it doesn't work for you to have your back knee down, you can do it higher. So like a lunge here with your back knee lifted, and then straighten both of your legs. So if your knee is not willing to be on the ground, you're welcome to do it that way. Okay, but then once you've got it, close your eyes if that's comfortable, and just flow with it. I'll just mention one more thing. If it feels a little tight in here, you can always go a bit wider and have your hands on the inside of the leg. It's nice if you're pregnant too. Okay, and then next time you come into that lunge shape, let's stay. Heel toe the foot out a little bit wider and bring your hands to the inside of that front leg. Let the toes turn out and sink your hips forward. I'm going to untuck my back toes, but I'm keeping my foot active. Lifting the toes, and you might choose to wing the knee open a little bit. Okay, you can see how that goes for you. We're just still warming up here, so you might find you want to inhale the knee in, exhale, open a little bit. You can kind of massage your way in. You might want to come down a little bit lower. And again, just be gentle with your hip because we're just getting started here. Stay with your breath wherever you are. Good, okay, and then we'll come back up to our hands if you're down. Bring the knee back in towards the midline. Walk the foot in, and then we'll step to the back of the mat, so we're on the knees. Toes can be tucked or not. Mine are more comfortable untucked. We're gonna roll up to standing on the knees. Hands come together and then down along the midline, kind of like we were doing standing. Bringing the fingertips, maybe the forehead down. And 2 more times rolling up. Down along the midline. Surrender. After your third one, you can stay in child's pose, or you can come forward to your belly and take 3 cobras. Whatever variation you like. Shoulders back, glutes engaged. One more. And then we return to downward facing dog. And then come to the top of the mat. So you can walk, step, jump if you want to. Beautiful. Next inhale, we'll roll up. Offering the hands to the sky. Bringing the hands together, down along the midline, curling to the earth. And poking the head up out of the water, inhaling, and then step your left foot back. Bring the knee down if that's okay for you. Feel free to pat it. Hands on blocks if you have them and you want them. Make sure you've got a nice long stance to work with. And just once you've got that stance, inhaling into that lunge shape and exhaling to straighten the leg. More than welcome to close your eyes here and just really take your time. There's no rush to get anywhere and there's nowhere to get. And then next time you're in that lunge, let's stay there. Walking the foot out a little bit wider, turning the toes out, and just exploring that opening for the hips. So you can untuck your toes if you want, but keep the foot active. Hips are coming forward. So we are kind of sinking, but I don't want you to fully collapse. Keep some energy in the inner thighs. Lift up the toes and maybe you're exploring opening the knee, winging to the side. And that's moving from the hip, of course, not the knee. You might be doing that in some movement, or you might be just still kind of working where you are. You may or may not want to come down a little bit lower. Just see what works for you in this moment, keeping in mind that we're just warming up the hips, so don't push it too much. Nice. Okay, as you're ready, let's come back up to the hands. Bring the knee into the midline, walk the foot back in, gently straighten the leg for a beat, just kind of realigning the hip and the knee. And then both knees are coming to the back of the mat. We'll take those 3 camel breaths again, rolling up, heart to the sky. Exhale, diving down and releasing the conscious mind. Trusting in those parts that are unknown, unspoken, unconscious. You may want to rest in child's pose after you've done that 3 times, or you can come forward and take your 3 cobras. Lifting as you inhale, returning to the earth as you exhale. Okay, and then take a little rest, whether that's laying on your belly in child's pose or even in downward dog, which is where we'll meet. Just take a couple of breaths. Sigh if you want. Okay, and then we'll meet in downward dog, or you could do this absolutely in hands and knees if you prefer. Find that little bit of a bend in your elbows, hugging them together. Right leg is going to rise to the sky. You can open the hips if that feels good. And then next time you exhale, step the foot forward between your hands and spin the back heel down like you were going to come into warrior 2. So the toes point to the long edge. You can have your blocks here as well if that's helpful, to the inside of the front leg. So we're in a warrior 2 stance with the legs. The knee is over the ankle, but we're going to walk the hands forward to kind of the top left corner of the room and melt the heart down. Steady with the legs. Okay, and then climb up to the hands. Bring your right elbow to your thigh and take the left bicep alongside the ear or onto the hip if that works better for you. Really pressing into the outer arch of that back foot, getting that nice long side waist, and you might hold the back of your skull if you want with the left hand, just adding a little bit more of a shoulder open. They come up through warrior two, but you can straighten the leg right away. Reach the right arm up and back, coming into exalted triangle. And you can again hold the back of your skull if you'd like a little bit more of that opening into the shoulder area. Inhale and then spin all the way back down to downward facing dog. You have some options here. One is to rest. Okay, another is to take the camel breaths with cobras, or you could take a full vinyasa if you want to at this point, just seeing how you're connecting with the energy right now. And that's, of course, moving through plank, a little push-up, and then upward facing dog or cobra. Back to downward dog or hands and knees. Left leg to the sky. You can roll the hips open if that feels good today. Step the foot through and spin the back heel down. So it's a nice long stance. Like warrior two, you can use the blocks if they're helpful, walking them to the upper right corner of the room and melting your heart down. Try to keep your knee over your ankle and kind of hug your left hip under so that the knee is not going off alignment. And then bring your left elbow to your thigh. Take the right bicep alongside the ear, and there's this kind of hugging under of that left hip or wrapping like the inner thigh up. Okay, and then working with that side stretch quality, pressing into the outer arch of that right foot. Maybe you're holding the back of your skull with your right hand. And then up through warrior two, but you can straighten that front leg right away. Reach up and take exalted, maybe holding the back of the skull or just having the arms straight. Exalted triangle. Okay, inhale and then spin all the way back down to downward facing dog. And then again, you can take vinyasa, you can do the camel breaths with the cobras or rest. And that full vinyasa is plank, chaturanga, so hugging the elbows in, lowering down halfway, and then pulling through to upward dog, but that could be cobra too. And then returning to downward dog or your child's pose. Just taking a couple breaths to receive. Okay, and then we're going to come from here into pigeon pose. So we're going to return to the earth and slow down a little bit again. So you can do that from downward dog or hands and knees for sure. If you have a bolster, it can be really nice to add on here. You don't necessarily need it. So I'm coming through downward dog. I'm going to take my right leg up to the sky, And sweep my shin over the bolster. That's a little too high up there. And then settle on it so that the bolster is supporting both of my hips. You can also sit on the bolster and swing the left leg back. That's a nice way of doing it too. If this shape doesn't work for you, feel free to take thread the needle or whatever hip opener does. You can also do 90-90 where you're sitting. You wouldn't need a bolster for this. Just in this kind of sitting on your right hip, back knee is bent, and then fold forward that way. You're in pigeon with me, straightening your back leg, maybe using your blocks to put your elbows or your chest or your head on. Getting nice and long and then folding forward. And if you do have the bolster underneath your hips, I really like that because it helps us to keep alignment without having to work very hard. So you can soften into it a little bit. And kind of enter back into that place where we're kind of encountering the universes inside. Letting ourselves be in the wisdom of that intuitive place. The hips, the belly. And then when the time is right, we apply that internal knowledge to the external world. Beautiful. Okay, when you're ready, we'll come out of this side. So you can lean over onto your right hip and swing your back leg to the front, or you can go back to downward dog if that's how you want to do that. So I'm kind of tucking my back toes under, hugging in, and then I'm going to extend that same right leg up to the sky and open the hips again. If you're seated, you could do a little windshield wiper, just bending the knees, washing them side to side. And then we'll come to the second side when you're ready. So left leg up and over, or swinging the right leg back if you're doing the seated transition. You want your whole shin on the ground in front of the bolster if you're using it. And if you don't have a bolster, you could wedge almost anything underneath your elevated hip. It will help. If you don't have anything under there, you really need to use your muscles a bit more. You need to concentrate on it a bit more. With the support of the props, you can soften a little bit more. Finding that length, folding down if that's comfortable for you. And feel free to adjust if 90-90 works better for you, or thread the needle. You know that, right? Most of you know your bodies really well. And that's what this practice is. It's getting to know your body. It's not about getting to know the poses in particular. Let's take one more. And then when you're ready, we'll come out. So you can swing your back leg to the front or tuck the back toes under, lift the hips. Just last time coming into downward dog, you can open the hip. If you're seated, you can do the windshield wipers, washing your knees side to side. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to come to a seat, and we're just going to take one last pose. And this is intended to be a soothing, inward looking pose. So it's got that sort of introverted energy of the new moon. And I will say that you could do shoulder stand. Okay, so if you're really comfortable in shoulder stand, you know how to do it safely, you want to, feel free to do it, but I'm not going to teach it. We're going to do a forward fold. So you can come with me. You may want to sit on a little piece of support like a low block. And if you have quite a tight lower back and or hamstrings, it can be really nice to have the bolster underneath the knees. It keeps a little bit of a bend there, or you could just bend them. I'm pretty flexible most days, so I'm using fewer props today, but it kind of depends on how I'm feeling. Feet could be together, hips distance, it could be even wider if you need. Sitting up nice and tall, and this might look like just your head coming forward, or you might hinge from your hips to come down, nice long heart, and then allow for some rounding in the spine as long as that feels safe for you. Keep your feet flexed and your legs active. So we've got some softness in the spine, but we still want to protect the knees and the lower back. So just being gentle there, allowing the head to relax if you can. Releasing the entire back side of the body. And part of what we're talking about today is tapping into the wisdom of the unconscious mind. And that's the back side of the body. It's the side that we're not always front facing with, we're not always showing that part of ourselves. So along the back is where we kind of have our secrets to ourselves. So just allowing yourself to be there. Okay, when that feels complete for you, you'll gently rise up. Take your fingertips around behind you, bend your knees so that your feet can come to the floor. And just take a moment to arch the back gently. Okay, briefly come to any comfortable seat and we'll just take a soft twist. Just releasing that work along the spine. Turning to one side. And then gently releasing and turning to the second side. Nothing too complicated there, just a gentle twist. Spine nice and neutral. And then return to center. Okay, so from here we can move into our reflection. So if you want to do this seated as a form of meditation, you can. You're more than welcome to come into an early Shavasana or any pose that you would like that allows you to passively receive the work that we've done and let your mind rest on the themes that we've been talking about today. And this would also be a nice moment to do some journaling if you like to process things through writing in your journal. Feel free to take a couple of minutes to do that. And as you're ready, let's come into Shavasana. This could be any restful shape. So if you're already there, stay. And you can come to laying on your back, laying over a bolster. Legs up the wall is a beautiful version of Shavasana. It's coming to rest, passively receiving all of the work that we've done today. So feel free to stay in this restful shape as long as you would like. And if you feel ready to start coming out of your Shavasana, you can wiggle your toes and fingers, deepen your breath. Maybe take a stretch. Gather your knees in and roll to one side. When you're ready, gently press yourself up to a seat. And maybe today we could put one hand on the heart and one hand on the belly, acknowledging the wisdom inside. And then bow your mind to your hands, thanking yourself for whatever it took for you to get here to your practice today. Honoring and acknowledging the long and complex teachers that are lineage, that is with us when we do our practice. And honoring and acknowledging the sacredness of the land and our relationship with it. Thank you for sharing that practice today.